We get the thoughts of Finance Chief Benjamin Diokno, who joins us now via Zoom. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Are you ready to sit as the chair of the Sovereign Wealth Fund?
Well, as you know, this will go through the process, Rico. The House is inclined to give that chairmanship to the Secretary of Finance. We don't know what the Senate version is, and there will be, of course, the conference committee. So, yes, let's wait for the final version.
But isn't it really the Finance Secretary the best person to chair the Sovereign Wealth Fund, because you're on top of the situation. You are aware of all the investment vehicles, where the money will be invested, instead of the President, who has a lot of national and international issues on his table?
Yeah, so what we did, Rico, is we look at the experiences in other countries. And you're right. In most cases, it's the Secretary of Finance or the Minister of Finance who chair the board of the Wealth Fund.
So you're saying then it is indeed best for the Secretary or the Minister of Finance to run the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And taking a look at the composition of this wealth fund going forward, if it is indeed signed into law, will it be uniquely Filipino, Secretary Diokno, or will it be based on successful sovereign wealth funds of other countries, like Singapore's Temasek Holdings, or Indonesia, United Arab Emirates, and Norway?
Well, under the present formulation, there will be a 15-man board chaired by the Secretary of Finance. There will be 4 private sector representatives. I think the chairman or the CEO of the fund will be there also as a member of the board, and then I think seven other appointees. It's not the president who will appoint. It is the board who will choose who should sit in the board. So,
what this sovereign wealth fund, will it be uniquely Filipino, or will it be a hybrid, wherein you'll be taking ideas and strategies from other global sovereign wealth funds?
That's a good question, because each sovereign wealth fund has its objective, right? There's no one-size-fits-all wealth fund. And I think in our case, it will be help us expand the fiscal space. In other words, this administration inherited some 80 to 90 ready-to-implement projects, huge projects that may need funding outside of the budget, under public-private partnership or whatever configuration. But so we need money that can be used right away to fund these projects. For example, there's some toll roads, some bridges, some projects that will give rates of returns of more than 20%. I think that those are the kind of projects that we want to fund.
And Secretary Diokno, to avoid question marks about the credibility, the transparency of this planned sovereign wealth fund, are you going to seek the advice of the World Bank, which is offering its services? Sovereign wealth funds that have been successful, like Singapore, Norway, and the UAE, to lend their best practices in creating this highly controversial fund?
In fact, this is not the first time, Rico. When I was governor of the central bank, we already thought of a wealth fund. And at that time, my plan is to curve a segment of the reserves as the funding for the wealth fund. And so we consulted the International Monetary Fund. And we also, I understand the Asian Development Bank also conducted a study on the feasibility of a wealth fund. And in fact, yesterday I talked with the World Bank representative here in the Philippines. So we want to look at the best practices, and there are certain conditions that will make sure that the wealth fund will succeed. And the first condition is that the objective of the fund has to be well defined, and that we will adhere to the so-called Santiago Santiago principle on transparency and accountability. And it has to have so many safeguards. And in fact, this wealth fund, we can count at least 8 safeguards to make sure that nothing will go wrong.
But Secretary Diokno, I lived in Singapore for more than 2 decades, and I followed very closely Temasek Holdings. They have made, of course, huge investments overseas. But of course, we're also seeing the ups and downs of the business cycle, the volatility of the financial markets and of their investments. And there were also losses in some years. So there's, for higher returns, there's also a lot of risk, Secretary.
That's correct. When you invest, you have to take risk if you want higher return, right? So we have to, each wealth fund would have its own risk management unit. They will weigh the risk against the return. And so you're right. For example, I'm sure many of the funds right now are not making money because of the crisis, right? And so, but during good times, it makes a lot of money. But by and large, if the fund is well managed, I think it will be ahead of just putting your money in treasury bills, for example.
Which, of course, is lower yields compared to higher yielding instruments if it's a sovereign wealth fund.
Low risk, but low yield
returns.
also. And in fact, that is the dilemma of the pension funds, right? They're supposed to optimize the money, the contribution of the members of, say, both the SSS and the GSIS. But if right now they are restricted to investing in secure treasury bills and treasury bonds.
And Secretary Diokno, it looks like this a sovereign wealth fund bill is moving quickly through the House, and it could go to the Senate and be passed quite quickly soon after that. How soon could this fund be created after it's passed by Congress?
I think because the Speaker himself is the principal author of this wealth fund, I think it will probably pass before December. They adjourn in December at the lower house, and it could be passed before the opening in July of the next Congress. So somewhere this summer, I think this will be formed. The legislation will be passed by both houses of Congress.
Thank you so much for your insights on the Sovereign Wealth Fund, Secretary Ben Diokno.